Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar on the Gartner IAM Summit findings and the impact on healthcare. I'm Rebecca Sliz, Senior Product Marketing Manager at Imprivata, and I'll be your host for today's webinar. Before we get into our topic today, I'm just going to go over a few housekeeping details. So you may want to familiarize yourself with the audience console. You can move and resize the windows that you see on your screen, and you may want to utilize the full screen option for the presentation window. There are some icons at the bottom of the screen. Clicking on the icons will hide or show the console windows. You can click on the Q&A widget to enter questions at any time during today's session, and we'll have time at the end to answer questions. The resource list widget provides links to other relevant information for you. And if you experience any technical issues during the presentation, you can click on the yellow question mark icon. Finally, I'd like to remind everyone that all of you who registered for today's session will receive an email with a link to the recording so you can listen again or share with your colleagues. So now to get into our presentation, I'm about to introduce Mark Nestline, our Senior Vice President for Engineering at Imprivata. Actually, he's going to do a little bit of his own introduction, but about today's topic. So last December, Mark, you and I were part of the team from Imprivata that attended the Gartner IAM Summit in Las Vegas. We had a productive couple of days. We enjoyed connecting with our customers and partners and various Gartner analysts at the summit, and we listened to a variety of presentations. So I'm excited to be able to talk with you today, not just about the IAM Summit, but more importantly, the takeaways for healthcare organizations when it comes to identity and access management. So before we get into the summit itself, I just wanted to ask you a little bit more about your background. So this wasn't your first Gartner Summit. Tell us a little bit more about your experience in the identity management space.
Thanks, Rebecca. My name is Mark Nestline, and I run engineering for Imprivata. I've been in and out of identity and access management, or digital identity technology space, for over 20 years. I was the Vice President of Engineering for RSA Security, and I also ran engineering and product management for Centillion, which was the predecessor company to Paradigm, which we bought 2 years ago. The genesis of our identity governance product is with Paradigm. I've also led engineering teams that build software as a service software for applicant tracking or hiring and for language technology. I did first attend the Gartner Summit 10 years ago. The conference and this technology area have come a long way. Rebecca, would you tell us a little bit about your background?
Sure, I'd be happy to. So my background is a little bit more on the healthcare marketing side. I got into this when I was working at 3M in Minnesota for a number of years. And really, I've had this passion for healthcare and marketing in healthcare for some time. It's been a more recent entry into the software side and especially IT security. And I think what I see in common with these different experiences, one making more hardware or consumables and now more into software, is really they're both about using technology to solve some of the biggest challenges for healthcare. So that's what brought us both here today. A little bit of passion, I would say, and that's certainly one of Imprivata's core values. So I think that's what keeps us going or gets us up in the morning. So now moving a little bit more into the Gartner Summit, at a high level, Mark, what kinds of changes have you observed in the topics, exhibitors, and attendees at the summit over time?
Well, the conference gets more popular every year. This was the 14th year, over 2,000 attendees and 97 exhibitors and 65 research sessions. And Gartner told me this was one of the 2 most popular Gartner Summits, which I thought was pretty interesting as it focused on a single area of identity and access management. One big difference is that there's a very solid healthcare presence at the summit. At one of the breakfasts, I counted 80 healthcare customer attendees at the breakfast alone, and I was pleased to see a good number of healthcare exhibitors and attendees. This is a clear sign that identity and access management is being adopted in the healthcare industry. Second, there's a noticeable difference in that the identity governance products are maturing quickly and are a much bigger part of the technology landscape. And third, there was clear identification that we are in a hybrid world and will be for the foreseeable future. There was a full track entitled Hybrid and Multi-Cloud IAM, which talked about embracing both on-premises capabilities and cloud capabilities. And this fits very well with our technology strategy here at Imprivata, where we are building cloud capabilities like authentication and web SSO that integrate well into our on-premises solutions.
Great, that sounds really good, and we may talk more about that in a little bit. But turning to healthcare, I'm curious why you think healthcare organizations are turning their attention more to identity governance at this point.
Well, that's a great question, and let's spend a minute looking at the evolution of IT and identity and access management in healthcare. And so we all know a number of years ago there was a mandate to move towards electronic health records, which was really an initiative that originally had been based upon revenue cycle needs and billing and things like that. We also all know that clinicians often are frustrated by the need to access information instantly and without any barriers. And that, from Imprivata's point of view, led to the growth of our single sign-on business, our single sign-on solution. That gives clinicians the ability to get both security and efficiency. We're also in a crisis right now, the opioid crisis. And from a healthcare IT perspective, that's driving organizations to do a better job managing prescriptions electronically. And again, we have a solution for that, our DEA-compliant multi-factor authentication solution. So there's two areas where identity and access management has come into play in a big way in healthcare IT. I mentioned before there's also a heavy focus on identity governance with a whole track comprised of 11 sessions dedicated to IDG and user management.
Wow, 11 sessions. That's a lot of sessions, and we attended a number of those. I'm curious what you have observed as some of the factors that have been impacting healthcare specifically, and again, leading them towards identity governance.
So there are a number of things that drive us in this direction, and although in healthcare, which is where we primarily work, it's very acute, these are also occurring across a broad set of industries. So mergers and acquisitions, more identities to onboard, to provision and deprovision, and to manage throughout their identity lifecycle. Security concerns, both inside and outside the organization. Provisioning, which is a part of identity governance, provides much quicker access to systems by users, including clinicians. And we all know how important that is when a new clinician shows up at an organization. Deprovisioning, however, provides a really great security advantage and security coverage. It closes one of the biggest security holes in organizations, which is the ability for people who should not continue to be provided access to capabilities then or remain with that capability. So deprovisioning is a huge security benefit for organizations. And then it's hard to pick up something to read without seeing something on digital transformation and digital transformation in healthcare. As Gartner put it, greater connectivity is driving radical transformations in every area of life and business. In a connected world, IAM sits at the very core of the business, key to every interaction. And this was very much the theme of the conference. You can't successfully manage digital transformation without a solid IAM strategy in place. A fourth driver for IAM is regulation. So we're all aware of HIPAA and the need to understand who's accessing what. We mentioned DEA for EPCS. And then, although not specifically regulation, security best practices. Healthcare is often considered a soft target for people looking to hack. And so security best practices really do call for solid levels of authentication and solid levels of identity management. All these things come together and make it hard for healthcare organizations to manage these processes manually. So they really need commercial solutions. And I think evidence of that is the popularity and interest in attending the Gartner IAM Summit from people in healthcare. So the vectors of industry development point towards needing really good identity and access management solutions, and the popularity at Gartner is evidence that that's the case.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would say definitely got the sense that it is time. It might have been time a long time ago, but for healthcare, it really is time, and they can't sort of ignore the problem any longer. So thinking about, some of those factors affecting healthcare, when it comes to an identity governance provider, what do you think is important for healthcare organizations to consider when they're looking at who to work with on some of these identity governance challenges?
So we at Imprivata have always believed and that it's important to have a vendor that understands workflows and the environment of healthcare. And Gartner doubled down on that. When they were talking about the Gartner Magic Quadrant, their analysts said it's important to select a vendor that best fits your needs, regardless of whether they're in the Gartner Magic Quadrant or not. We are not in the Gartner Magic Quadrant. 15 plus years ago, we made a decision to focus on the healthcare market, and we built up a very strong reputation there. The Magic Quadrant requires vendors, though, to not focus on a single vertical, and therefore, at least as defined today, we will not be in the Magic Quadrant. However, we do think that our depth of background with healthcare workflows fits with our customers' needs, and also that Gartner recommends that. Other reasons why healthcare organizations, have to have a vendor who knows healthcare. We understand the applications that your organizations rely on, particularly the EMRs. An example of that is we have API-level integration with Epic, allowing us to provision users at both the EMP and SCR record level. EMP being anyone who uses Epic, a user, and SCR being a schedulable Epic resource, meaning a provider. And we also understand hybrid IT environments, clinical applications, for example, that might be on-prem, and business applications that might be cloud-based. So we provide a breadth of capabilities and a depth of knowledge in the vertical, and those are both things that Gartner recommended, and we were pleased to be aligned with that general thought process.
All right. So I can see a lot of reasons why healthcare organizations should be considering a commercial identity governance solution or, a stronger identity and access management strategy and platform. What's holding them back?
So these kinds of projects, in particular identity governance projects, can feel overwhelming. And healthcare organizations may have heard about identity governance projects that take years to implement, are costly, and don't have the tangible results they would like to see. And Gartner clearly identified this with their track entitled Principles of Successful IAM. They focused on attainable milestones. Some of Gartner's research showed that 50% of identity governance projects are in some sort of distress. So we've seen that with our customers, and we've developed solutions for that, in particular an implementation methodology that delivers value in a short time. So we focus in the initial implementations on 3 to 5 critical applications. Often there's our Active Directory, Exchange, your EMR, maybe an HR application, or maybe a specific application that needs to be addressed immediately. And then we grow off that in chunks.
Right. So I can see why identity governance projects may be hard to start, also hard to implement. I've also heard that sometimes organizations get stuck. They begin an implementation, but they don't necessarily see the value. So how would Imprivata help address this?
So it's true that identity governance is a journey. More than one installation, more than one and done. And we've seen this with our healthcare customers, and they're continuing to expand their number of applications for which they're using automated provisioning. And working with customers has helped us develop the insight into this healthcare specific maturity model that you see on the screen. In the first phase, we get customers up and running with those critical applications, set them up using GRC, the governance, risk, and management and compliance functionality. And in the next phase, we can help customers use such functionality as attestation reporting, where they automate the process by which the line managers approve that their employees have access to the right applications at the right entitlement level. And this process continues through several phases of maturity. We also see customers growing out from one particular identity and access management pillar into others. And that was clearly identified at Gartner also. So there were some other tracks. I think I mentioned for principles of successful IAM and hybrid and multi-cloud IAM were two of the 5 major tracks. The other 3 were multi-factor authentication and decentralized identity, using analytics, things like FIDO, biometrics, and other advanced authentication methods to deliver a good user experience while increasing security. So something that's highlighted there is both a good user experience and increasing security. And we're happy that the kinds of capabilities we can provide can do both at once. We talked a lot about identity governance, and user management was another major track at the conference. And there was also a track on IAM in the era of scale. This was mostly focused at consumer level IAM. It might be a little less applicable for this audience.
Got it. So back to the conference and thanks for sharing some of those tracks that are relevant to both IAM in general and for healthcare organizations that are thinking about IAM and identity governance. What were some of your favorite presentations at the summit?
I really enjoyed Alex Simmons' talk about Microsoft's identity and access management strategy. They're a very important partner of ours. We have very complementary capabilities. For example, we offer healthcare-specific solutions to enable Office 365 and Teams, for example, in a shared workstation context. The breadth of Microsoft solutions is remarkable. Azure AD is also becoming a new pillar in many of our customers' environments, and we're jointly building solutions around that. I also was quite impressed with the consistent guidance for multi-factor authentication and MFA being the new norm. There were 13 sessions dedicated to MFA, and the guidance was very specifically, if you can use MFA, do it. It's the number one thing you can do to improve security in your environment. And Rebecca, you also attended a lunch session led by Microsoft.
I did, yeah. That lunch session was great. The topic was Women in Identity, which is also the name of a nonprofit organization that was founded by someone from Microsoft along with some partners. And Microsoft was among the facilitators, as was one of the Gartner analysts who's covered the IAM space for some time. And because these women have been involved in the field for a while, they were especially pleased that the room was just full of people. I think we estimated about 200 women attending this lunch. And, we talked about how identity is a really exciting space and that there's still a need to encourage more women to join the field of IT. So I brought back some of the learnings and suggestions from that lunch for an Imprivata group, which is called Women in Tech. It's a cross-functional initiative here to support women in engineering and product management, as well as in some of our marketing and business roles at Imprivata. So that was one of my favorite sessions for sure, and we both, I think, got a lot out of the conference. I'm wondering if we have any questions from our audience as we've kind of wrapped up what we wanted to share with you today. So I see one other question that we can follow up on here, which is, what about the healthcare industry makes IAM different? what are the industry-specific challenges? I know we touched on this a little bit. I don't know if you want to elaborate on anything.
Sure.
You can pick up too.
Sure. No, I'd be happy to do so. So there's a couple of things. In healthcare, so IAM is a set of technologies that addresses certain use cases, and you might have different IAM solutions for different use cases. And one of the ones that really jumps out at us here is that in healthcare, the shared workstation scenario that you'll see in healthcare providers, that is not typical. There's things like it in some industries, like manufacturing maybe, but that specific use case creates the need for new technologies that make it possible for people to be identified and managed at a shared workstation. And healthcare also has a second property that it has the use cases have workflows that are very specific to healthcare. So that clinicians need to get access. It's unlike a financial record where if you don't authenticate in a particular way, then you can't get in. Well, we can't keep the doctors away from the doctors and nurses away from the patient records. So those are two things that jump out. So convenience, specific workflows that are important to healthcare. The other thing is that organizations don't have uniform workflows. So each department in a healthcare organization will have different requirements. So an X-ray department will work differently from an emergency room. So it will work differently from another department in the hospital. So another organization. And so these are things that are different in healthcare, and it is important to think about those things in the context of your IAM strategy.
Absolutely. Thanks very much, Mark, for adding to that answer and that question, and for sharing some other insights from the Gartner conference. Do you want to wrap it up for today?
Sure. So Rebecca and I and some of the product managers that joined us really enjoyed the Gartner IAM conference. It's a great opportunity to step away from the day-to-day work, in our case, building great products, and see what the best practices and new ideas are in the industry. As someone who's been in this particular technical field for a while, it's great to see the technology advancing, and really, more importantly, the technology being adopted, and just really energizing to see that.
Great. Thank you very much. I enjoyed this session with you as we enjoyed the Gartner conference, and that does it for our webinar presentation today. Thank you all for joining us.
Thank you all.